Good morning, everybody. My name is Kyle Houchins. I am a tech and a trainer for McNeil, and this is Getting Started Rhino for Windows. And so I have a confession to make. I did this video once before on the Mac, and it pooped in its PJs, and the video failed, and I was bummed because it was a good session, and the recording was just unsalvageable. I was on a Mac, and I was using my iPad as a sidecar, and I was doing it wirelessly, and something about that jacked up the frame rate on the video really, really badly. So if you came to the Mac session and you're like, wait a minute, I saw this already, I apologize. I'm going to do it again just because I wanted to get this session recorded. If you haven't seen it before, ignore all of that. Welcome. We're going to sit down and try and figure out how to build this thing. But full disclosure, I did build this once before, so I do know how to build it this time. And the upside is there'll be a little less of me fumbling around trying to figure out how to do it and a little bit more about talking about how we got there, but the spirit of the thing is still there. So what we're going to do today is we're going to build this little lounge chair, and I was in a vintage store a couple weekends ago, and there was a really nice version of an Eames lounge chair, and I was looking at it, and I thought it was a cool thing. And then, as designers normally do, I started nitpicking it and decided that I didn't like the relationship between the wood pieces on it. And then I started doing a little doodle on my phone about how I would change it. And that doodle turned into this doodle. And I'm going to move this doodle back because it looks better the farther you get away from it. But the goal is that we're going to try and build this thing essentially on the fly. And we're going to do some SubD. We're going to do some Nurbs. We're going to do some rendering. We're going to do some strategy and, stuff like that. So the first thing I always do, first of all, just let's start from the very beginning. And the way that I normally do this is to bring in a picture using the picture command. And I just find the sketch on my desktop and I will drop it into the scene, and we can use Gumball to do whatever we want to do to it. And then I typically assign it to a layer so that I can turn the sketch on or off as I need to. And if I go into perspective view, you can see that it's still on the C-plane that we originally put it in, which is the front view. And that allows us to be able to, see it and move it around and that kind of stuff. Now, this sketch is not awesome for building from because it's not an ortho, it's not a 4-view, it's a perspective view. And anytime somebody comes in and drops this thing into your lap and you have to try and figure out how to build it, there's a little bit of kind of strategy to try and figure out how to deal with that. So what I want to do, I'm going to be working in inches in the US, and so from anybody who's from Europe, you can talk amongst yourselves and make fun of me, but I'm going to use inches. That's just, I'm old. That's how I build. And then I figure out how to work with the rest of the world so that they don't shame me mercilessly. But the basic measurement that I'm going to base off of is the stand here, or the legs, and each one of these legs is about 12 inches long. And so if I start from 0 and I just draw a line that's 12 inches long, that gives me a starting point where I can come in here and I can draw a circle and I can snap to the end of that, and I can say this is about the maximum diameter of what I want these feet to be. Now my sketch is a little bit big, so let's just bring it down so that it's a little bit more in scale to what we're dealing with. And I think from a strategic point of view, I'm going to start from the bottom and go up. And so the first thing that I'm going to do is look at this and think about, like, okay, what tools am I going to use to build this thing? If I look at this base closely, and the closer I get to that sketch, the less I like it. But the goal here is that these are kind of, a 5-sided starfish with some really nice transitions in between and a little blendy part up here and, a little elegant, we'll call this an elegant line. Imagine, if you will, if this was an elegant line instead of one that looks like it was drawn by somebody in a paint shaker. But, that's kind of what we're looking for. And then it's got some little round feet and all that kind of stuff. And so this right off the bat just feels SubD to me all day long. And so let's just go that way to start with. I don't want to overthink it. We'll just start there and go. And if I know I've got 5 legs, I probably want a face in between each leg, which means in my command line, I want 10 faces around, and then 4 faces vertical is probably enough to get me started. And then I want a radial top and bottom, so I'm going to use the tri cap face instead of the quad. The quad doesn't give me the ability to be able to set up symmetry down the line, which is what I want to do. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to just poke that at 0. And then I'm going to shift drag out something that kind of feels about center posty size. And then we're going to pull up to like here. And what that does is that gives us, if I go to the top view, that gives us a face that we can mess with, or an object that we can start messing with. And the only complication here is I actually want to extrude these 2 faces, and I want them to go this way, right? Now, what's the problem? The problem is you can see right off the bat that it's skewing. This is a radial object, which means that I have to like extrude this in a radial fashion, which means if I want to extrude this face using gumball, I probably need to rotate this part so that it's aligned to the center of this face instead of the split on this face here. So let's do that and let's get that arranged. So I'm going to just bring up gumball, and I'm going to do one of my favorite tricks, which is to double click the rotation handle, and I'm going to snap the rotation handle to the midpoint of that face, which skews the alignment of the gumball, but if I rotate holding shift, it allows me to align the center of that face to the center of gumball. So now this is actually oriented in the way that I want, because if I come down here and I grab these faces now and I extrude them, you can see from top view that this is aligned just the way I want it. So this is the leg that I'm going to mess with, and then I'm going to let symmetry give me all the rest of them. So let's go set up our symmetry now that we've got this thing kind of set up where we want. And I'm going to right click on the radiate tool up here. The left one, the radiate SubD, that actually takes the entire object and creates an array of that entire object. The right click allows us to do a sub selection and find a radial pattern within Started Rhino itself. So I'm going to pick, this is going to be my first face and this is going to be my second face. Oops, let's do it again. This is going to be my first face and that's going to be my second face. And that gives me a little pie wedge in here. And so now these faces, whatever I do here, is going to be reflected in the rest of the model. So if I pull this out, I get my legs, okay? And because I spent the time to set this up correctly in the beginning, you know, when I extrude this, this is now symmetrically oriented and I can deal with that kind of stuff the way I want to deal with it. So let's continue with this. So I'm going to pull this out once and then I'm going to pull it out one more time. And the reason that I pulled it out twice is I need 3 edges to make a curved shape, right? If I only had 2 edges, then all that allows me to be able to do is to move this down or up, right? It's like YMCA. So if I can't have that center section in there, then that doesn't give me the ability to be able to do that, which is actually what I want to be able to do. So I want to be able to pull this and give myself the, you know, the ability to be able to interject that shape into the form. So let's go here, and I'm going to just pull this. Yes, we are recording this, and it's going to be on YouTube. On our Rhinoceros 3D on YouTube is the channel where all this goes. And so what we're going to do is pull this out so that it's kind of in the neighborhood of our 12-inch long, and then we need to decide kind of what is happening with the shape on this thing. Maybe it tapers a little bit, which I think I want it to do. I want it to taper a little bit so it's a little less awful. And then we're going to grab this and maybe we expand this a little bit like that. And then I'm going to go into box mode, and I'm going to do my final edits here. And so what I'm going to do is grab these faces. I'm actually going to rotate these 90 because I want that to be the thing that's facing down. And then I'm going to stick this kind of right there. And this edge might need to rotate a little bit depending on what it looks like, but let's take a peek and see what that looks like. And we're getting there. And now I'm going to take these faces and I'm going to extrude it once, and then I'm going to shift drag and scale that out to give it a little foot. And what that does is that gives me the ability to put that little landing pad on this thing. And let's move the whole thing this way, like that. And you get this really delightful little highlight that starts showing up there. And if we need it to continue, we can extrude it one more time, and that gives us a little bit bigger foot that we can mess with, and a little bit more weight down there for the post or whatever the foot is that's going to be on this thing. Now, the shape of this is a little square. I think I'd want this to be a little rounder, so let's grab this edge and let's force that out a little bit like that. And that is starting to feel pretty decent. We're getting some nice highlights in there. I like how that's all kind of coming together. And when this is all aluminum and beautiful, we'll get all sorts of really nice highlights and stuff in there, which for a old, originally trained as a car designer person is fun. So, all right, so let's grab this, and I'm going to just poke that up so that it creates that little pocket in there, and maybe this section comes in a little bit. And let's throw a material on there and just see what it looks like if we switch to rendered mode. And we go to materials. Full disclosure, I did steal the materials from the original thing, so I'm just not going to rebuild the materials from scratch, but I've got some materials built in here. So that gives us kind of like a pretty thing, right? So I'm pretty happy with that. Maybe we need to adjust so that it touches the floor a little bit. So let's grab actually this, and let's pull this up a little bit. And I'm going to pull it a little higher because we're going to stick a foot under it. And then maybe this has a little bit nicer curve to it. And maybe I'm going to align the gumball with that and then scale that in a little bit, just a little more elegant than we had it. And then this base, maybe this base is fat, maybe it isn't. Let's pull it up a little bit. Maybe it's a little too fat, and we'll just poke that back up where we found it. All right, so I think we've got a pretty good result here. This edge, I might want to just crease this edge for the time being, and I'm going to just crease that to give it a hard edge. We might soften that going forward. We may convert this to Nurbs and put a mechanical fillet on that, which is one of my favorite tricks with SubD. If you need sharpness in your SubD, which is one of the things that is a little bit of a concern in SubD, is you get this kind of mushy mouth kind of modeling. Getting sharpness and getting the balance between soft organic and sharp detail when you're moving light around on the surface is important. And sometimes it's tough to get stuff that's sharp on SubD. If you crease it, when we go to render this, it looks really CG, right? We don't like creases. What we'd really like to do is have a little nice fillet on the end of that. You can get that in SubD. If we go back here, and if I were to, say, for instance, put a bevel on this, and I'm going to do that in box mode. If we put a little bevel on here, and it's freaking out because of the symmetry, but let's undo that. Let's do the bevel on this one. So let's do, and I think this, it doesn't like doing the bevel and symmetry. So let's kill the symmetry for the time being because we can always put it back. And we are going to, let's see, radiate. We are going to kill the symmetry on that one. So now the symmetry's off of it. We can come in here and put a bevel on it, and that's behaving a little bit more nicely. And it looks like we've got 3 segments. I only need 2 because I only want 1 on either side. So if we stick a tiny little bevel on here and we go back to smooth mode and we go back to rendered, you can see that we do get a very nice rolled edge on that, but it's not quite a mechanical fillet, right? It's not quite, you know, that. If you're looking for that, leave it creased. When you convert the thing to Nurbs, the tab key is box smooth. If you're looking for a mechanical fillet, just leave it creased when you convert to Nurbs and just throw a fillet on it. That's a really nice way to kind of get that balance. And it looks like we've got a little pupus here in the bottom, so let's fix that. Boop, there we go. And the next thing we want to do is throw some little feet down here. So let's grab this and we can just draw a curve. This is just going to be a Nurbs object. So if we start here, draw our edges out. Like that. And we'll come back something like that. And then we'll revolve that. Just a simple revolved surface. And we'll just get our little foot out there. And that is more of a puck than a foot, so I'm going to just shrink it a little bit and tuck it up in there. And then we can adjust all of this so that it lands on the ground like that. All right. Let's assign a material to that. And take a peek and just see what we look like. That's all right. Maybe this has got a couple materials on it. Maybe it's not just black, but we'll leave it like that for now and we'll mess with it later. So we're going to do a polar array around 0, 5, and that gives us the rest of those. All right. So let's do some benevolent thievery here, and we can look at our original sketch and decide, like, is that, you know, following the intent of our sketch? And I think that it looks like this edge is a little thicker on the sketch. So, and we lost our symmetry, so let's put it back. Oops. Got to pick the right ones. Looks like I'm not getting the right magic combination on that. So let's do it the old-fashioned way, and I'll just grab all 4 of these, or all 5 of these, and I'm going to grab this whole ring, and then we can just pull that down a little bit, make that a little thicker, and that feels a little bit more like our sketch. So let's steal this, and let's just copy it, and we're going to rotate it 180. I'm going to scale it down a little bit using shift drag on the gumball, and then I'm going to just poke this in there. I'm going to grab all of these faces. Do that from the front view. Control Shift drag gets you the sub-object selection, and I'm going to give this a little post like that, and then I'm going to tuck this down in there. Maybe this needs to be a little bigger. Maybe the whole thing needs to scale up just a hair. And that gives us the base that we can start kind of building the chair on. And it looks like there's a little angle to this, which we can certainly add, but let's build it flat first, and then we can always do our angle later. So the next thing I want to tackle is kind of the shells, because that's going to allow us a foundation, give us a foundation to build on top of. And I'm going to draw half the curve and then mirror it. There's no reason to try and draw a symmetrical curve. That'll make you crazy. So I'm going to start at 0 just because it's easy to know that we're landing at 0. And I'm going to come out here and do 2, 3. And then I'm just going to kind of vastly overbuild this curve. And I'm going to move it up to where it's going to live. And then mirror. And then join. And then I'm going to just take this, use the gumball extruder, and I'm going to click and drag, but I'm going to hold down shift and just extrude that in 2 directions. And that's going to give me my base. And then what I can do is I can now start adjusting this thing. I'm going to control shift drag all of that. And then I'm going to drop my gumball down to about there. And then I'm going to rotate this entire thing to get my tilt, get my office gangster lean on, and just tilt that back just a little bit like that. And then I'm going to just steal this because all of these shells are about the same width. I'm going to just drag and tap Alt, and then I'm going to rotate this to get my seat back. And I'm going to tuck that through. I'm actually going to poke it all the way through. And then I'm going to grab the next section. And actually that is big enough that I might get both pieces out of the back. So let's do that. So I can see exactly where my intersection line is here, right? And I that gives me a good reference point to know where the seam between the 2 shells has to be. So I'm going to draw a trim curve down here, and I'm just going to bring this up, and Charles Eames is probably going to come back from the grave and haunt me for this, but I don't like how his 2 pieces relate to each other. So I'm going to change that a little bit. And then also Noel can't sue me for this video because it's mine, not theirs. Yeah, that's why we're doing it. Legal. And then I'm going to pull this shell kind of like that. And then, I don't know what's funnier, that they would actually sue me or that I'm arrogant enough to think that they would ever see this video and care about it. It's probably a mixture of the 2. All right, and let's do the headrest something like this, and that curve's horrible, so we're going to fix it. And actually, I think I need a little bit more on the top of this. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to shrink this. I'm going to move this down here. I'm going to rotate this and snap it to that. And I'm going to just scale this down a little bit. And then I'm going to grab this and copy it. And then move gumball here, and I'm double clicking to get the gumball loose. And then I'm going to tip this forward just a hair and then bring that down like that. All right, so that gives me a 3rd piece that I can mess with. And now I can kind of independently design these curves without having to worry about whether I've got enough surface or not. So let's bring this back here, and I'm going to just kind of come in something like that. And then we can fuss these curves a little bit and decide, like, do we like this relationship? And do we like that relationship? And this is the thing that I love about designing in 3D instead of just being a model monkey and copying drawings. I love making the decisions in 3D because you can actually see what's going on here. And if I want to get another gut check, I can actually project these curves onto these surfaces and see what they look like in 3D and decide, do I actually like the shape that that's making in 3D? Does that kind of do what I wanted it to do? Does that, you know, satisfy kind of what I was hoping to get out of this model? And, you know, my sketch, I'm showing this kind of winging way up here like that. And I think that I don't like that now in 3D. I think if in 3D that would be like way up here. I mean, I guess we could try it and see. Let's grab these two edges and pull them up a little farther. And actually, let's just do it with the points. Turn the points on, grab those points, and we'll just pull that up a little bit to give ourselves a little bit more. And let's draw another curve and just see where we like it. Let's go kind of way up here and do something more like that. And then we'll project that one and see which one we like better. Oh yeah, I hate that. So let's stick with the original. So I'm going to bring this, pick that and just trim. I'm going to pick this and trim. And I'm going to pick this and trim. And that gives me my 3 shells. And I can mess around with the relationship between these. And it looks like on the drawing, I'm showing this being much taller. And so maybe I compromise with myself and say, okay, maybe that is a little taller. I'm going to align the gumball and just go, do that. And that gives us a little bit more of that relationship. And, you know, we're kind of getting away from the sketch, but I guess I'm kind of okay with that because now that I'm looking at this in 3D, I kind of like the way these shells are relating to each other now. So, you know, the screw around and find out factor is working for us here. And the fact that I think I like this better with this kind of very enclosed bolster thing going on there. So I think I'm gonna roll with that. And now that I'm here, the only other thing that I need to figure out is you know, I need to add some thickness to these, which is pretty trivial, and then I need to start working on the cushions. And the crux of the cushions is going to be this pillowy section in here. And these are easy, you know, that's just a SubD spot, you know, SubD thing that we're going to just mush over the edge, and that's fine. But the upholstery here where we have these little button tucks in here is going to be the thing that's going to be challenging. So let's do the easy part, and we'll process how to do the hard part in the background while we're thinking about it. And I'm going to do these about 1 inch thick. I'm going to do a loose offset, and I'll do it not loose first and show you what it looks like. And you'll notice that this was a very nice, simple surface, right? This is just a very simple thing. And if you look at the offset and see how much complexity has been added to the inside of that surface, this is a very, very accurate offset. You could go apply math to this, and the math would math the way that you wanted it to do, right? I don't really care about that. I really want this surface to kind of maintain its structure. So if I come back and I do a solid offset, but I set this to this loose and I let it run, then you'll notice that it gives me the same structure as the outside. Now, the connecting surface is bad, so I'm just going to delete that. But if you look at the inner surface, you can see that it matches the structure of the outer surface. So if I isolate that, I don't care that the connecting surface was bad, because I was going to put it together with a blend surface anyways, because I wanted a much softer edge on that than I was going to get anyways. And if I lock these together and pull this back, you can see that it ends up giving me this nice shape. Now, the isoparams are twirling a little bit, which I don't want, so I'm going to add some shapes, and I'm just going to direct this to be a little less squirrely when it comes around the corners. And that is going to make this thing behave. And this is one of the coolest things about Blend Surf, is it allows you to be able to, you know, kind of influence what that blend looks like. Now, the cool thing about blend is you can also, the slider stops at 0.25, but you can overblow that. So if I want to go 0.1 and 0.1, you can do that and it will flatten it out a little bit more. So now the result is a fairly flat surface with just a little fernier on the edge here, which is going to catch some light when we render this and make this look like it was run through a router instead of, CG part. So I'm going to say okay. And then we're going to join this up, and it should join up. And then if we throw some wood on here, it should look nice and chair-like, which it does. Okay. We could map something else on this surface, like if we wanted to throw something else on here to kind of make it look a little more end grainy, we can do that. Maybe we like that, maybe we don't. So I'm going to just leave it like that for now. And then Brian James did a really great video, by the way, that's on YouTube that talks about how to texture map this kind of stuff. And he does a great thing about how to unwrap end grain and then apply end grain to it so it looks really good. So I'll let you take a peek at that video, which it's more than I want to get into for this one. We're going to just build this thing and kind of run and gun here. So let's do the rest of these guys. We're going to do solid offset again. Let it run, solid offset here, let it run. We're going to shift control click both of these and delete them because they're trash. And then we're going to put them back with a 0.1, 0.1. And we might need to throw a couple shapes in there. Maybe not. I don't know. That looks okay. I think for what we're doing here, that's probably going to be fine. Maybe we want to straighten out this one right here. And you'll notice that the surface reacts when I do that. All you have to do is go back and click in here and it'll re-accept your original settings. So we'll get this guy jointed up, and then we'll do the same thing up here. And we're just going to do a blend surface on that. 0.1. 0.1. And I'm going to lock those together. And this one twirled quite a bit, so I'm going to throw a few in there just to help lock that down. You just want to avoid like this, the isoprem's really spinning out on you. And that looks fine. And then I'm just going to tap these again and it'll re-accept that. When you add the shapes, they go in kind of the default values, so the surface reacts like that. We just have to bump it a little to get it to re-accept. So we're going to take these, we'll assign our wood to them again, and we now have this. And it looks like we're in box mode for that, so if we just tap tab to get back to SubD, we've got our base like that. All right, and we can decide whether that needs to tip more or not later. Let's jump into the cushions. So the cushions, I'm going to isolate this, are kind of fun because what we're going to do is just go to wireframe and we're going to use a SubD part. This is kind of the bottom of our seat, right? This line right here. And if I go to SubD and I just grab a single face, and I'm just going to set the point count on this to 1 and 1. And isolate parts quickly. I just type the isolate command and hit enter. Actually, I have a hotkey set up for it. So I have isolate set up on II for an alias. And if you don't know how to do aliases, this is a super awesome function of Rhino. You can enter key combination here and then add the command to it. And this is an old invert hide used to be how you do this. The command to do this now is just isolate. So we do that and then say okay. And then when I hit II and then right click on the mouse or hit the space bar or hit enter, it runs the command. Okay. And then show is what you use to bring it back. So we've got a point count of 1. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to draw a single square. Now, one of the things about SubD, if you are just getting into SubD and aren't familiar with it, there's a thing that I refer to as the rule of 3. And rule of 3 is it only takes 3 points or 3 edges to make a transition. And that actually is a concept that we talk about in Nurbs, and I talk about this a lot, but there's a full video on rule of 3 that I would recommend taking a peek at if you're just kind of getting started with Rhino. But the quick version of it is, we don't make corners like this, right? That's not how you make a corner. That's not how you draw a good curve. That's not how you do SubD. What you do is you go, this is an anchor. My corner is 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's it. That's all it takes to make a corner. And if you need a tighter corner, you move those 3 points closer together. If you need a looser corner, you move those 3 points farther apart. And the exact same scenario happens in SubD. If I go here and I grab a cube and I draw this out and I get rid of this, and let's get rid of this, you'll notice something very familiar, which is, this is your anchor, that's your anchor. Anchor, anchor. 1, 2, 3. That's your corner. So if I want the SubD to be tighter, I'm going to move that edge, or that point. Doesn't have to be the whole edge. I can just move that point and I can just sharpen up that corner. Right? And that gets nice and tight. If I go the other direction, it gets softer. So I need those 3. So when I was laying out the legs and I was like, I need 3 edges here, that's why. You don't need 10. You don't need this. And the biggest mistake that people make when they do SubD is they use too much stuff. I had a brilliant instructor in college. His name was Ken Okayama. He's an absolutely world-renowned, world-class designer. He worked for Porsche and Ferrari and Pininfarina and stuff like that. But one of his favorite things to say was, too many lines. You have too many lines. These lines good, these lines too many. Make these lines go away. Same thing in SubD. Don't use too many lines. Ken, if you're out there, you're the man. So we've drawn our first edge in here, and I'm going to just, or our first face in here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select this edge, and I'm going to start dragging the C-plane waffle, and I'm going to hold down Control. And that's going to extrude out another face, and you'll see that that is going to give us that. And then we're going to go one more time out to here. And that gives us 1, 2, 3, which means I can get this shape here, and then I've got 1, 2, 3, which means I can get the shape in the back. So I'm going to just pull this down like that. I'm going to pull this up like that. I'm going to pull this in a little bit. And when we go to smooth mode, you can see that our shape is now starting to come together. And I can refine this shape a little bit like this. And I'm going to pull this forward a little bit. And I'm going to pull this up a little bit. And I refine in smooth mode. I model in box mode. And the reason I do that is because it's really easy to absolutely make insane SubD models and torture your box mode to the point where it's just completely unusable and the model will start to misbehave. And you're like, I can't figure out why this is doing this. What in the world is going on? And that's because you'll end up with a box mode that is just absolutely positively destroyed. And so when you go back into box mode, you'll see what's going on and you'll be able to say, oh, okay, this is, this edge is twirled all crazy and, all that kind of stuff needs to just get managed, and it becomes very, very obvious. And as we get into this, you'll see what I mean about that. So I'm going to pull this up like that, and I'm going to let that poof out a little bit. I'm okay with that because that's going to be a nice, the seat bottom and the seat back are going to kind of mush together, which is nice. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to move it over here like that, and then I'm going to rotate it just a little bit, and I'm actually going to smash it just right up against the base there. I'm going to mirror this, and now I've got two SubD faces. I've got this one, And I've got this one. I'm going to isolate using my hotkey. SubD is it's a hybrid between Mesh and Nurbs. You can create Nurbs from SubD just using the toNurbs command, and we'll definitely going to do that. You'll see that as we get going. So the next thing I want to do is I want to bridge these two together, and I'm going to run the bridge command. And we're going to do, that's our first set of edges. That's our second set of edges. And the segments between here, I want 4 segments. So I'm going to just pump that up to 4. And I am going to join it, and I'm not going to crease it. I'm going to say OK. And that's going to give me this nice kind of poofy cushion, right? And so if I bring this back, you can see that it sits in there nicely. And we can mess with it now, right? I can grab this edge and this edge, and I can start to move this around so that it starts to feel a little bit more cushiony. And then I can start shift control clicking on points, and I can adjust, how much bolster this thing has. We can move these edges down and decide whether that pushes in or not. And then these points here, we can decide whether they're, how much that is going to affect all of this. And so I think I'm going to leave this kind of like that. Maybe these two come down a little bit in the center like that. And so now the crux is we need to figure out how to put those tufts in. And what we need is we need to go from this square quad-based geometry, and I'm going to isolate so we can work on just this, to a radial geometry. So I'm actually going to go to box mode, and we're going to delete these, and I'm going to grab these edges now, and instead of bridging them together, which is how we had it before, I'm going to start dragging on the scale handle. I'm going to hold that down. I'm going to hold down Shift, and then I'm going to hold down Control. And what that's going to do is extrude in a ring of faces, and I'm going to bring that maybe 1, and then I'm going to do the same thing again, and I'm going to bring that all the way in to the center like that. Now, I've got a little bit of housekeeping to do here. I have to kind of pull this back up to where it needs to be and get that to feel a little more, another Ken Okayama-ism, a little more less bad. This needs to be more or less bad. All right, let's take this and just poke that in a little bit. And now what we need to do is we need to add our wrinkles. And to do that, I'm going to grab these edges. And I think I can do them all at the same time. Let's try. All these radial edges right here. And I don't have enough edges to be able to go to make my uppy downy spots, to make the wrinkles. So I'm going to go to SubD, and I'm going to bevel these. And I'm going to add some beveling in here like that. And now what I can do is I've got some edges in here that I can now start messing with and add a little bit of variance to this, right? Because they're not going to be perfect like that. And maybe this guy, maybe this one goes over a little bit. And then what I can do is I can pick the centers and I can drop those. And then when I go to box mode or smooth mode, you can see that we've got some wrinkles in there. Now, the wrinkles are a mess, and we don't we need to adjust all of this so that it's not terrible. So let's fix that. So if we go to shaded mode and we grab this and we pull this back up like that, and we grab this entire edge and we bring that a little bit flatter, and then this edge needs to come up like that, and these guys need to come up too. And you can start to see like why this is important to do this in box mode, because if I was trying to do this in smooth mode, you would not believe the mess that I would make out of this. It would be high comedy what would this thing would end up looking like. So let's just pull this back out like that. And as we're kind of refining this shape, you can see that it's starting to come together. Now, these wrinkles are going out way too far, and they're not kind of behaving the way I want them to behave. So I'm going to just delete the ends of these. And I'm going to let that pull back a little bit. You can see as I delete those edges, the creases fade out, right? So as they're going away, they're fading out like that. And that gives us a better version of that. And it's still a little wavy. We can still probably do better. So let's grab maybe these edges here. And let's see that big variation right there. Let's just soften that a little bit. And this is where box mode is really, really useful, because you can really see what's going on. And I think what I might do is I might actually take these. Let's leave them alone. I am going to flatten this out a little bit. And you can kind of sight down the isoparams, right? See how this one is really still very low? So if we pull that out a little bit, it's starting to get a little nicer. This one is really diving, so let's bring that up like that. And then let's throw some symmetry on this so that we can get this on both sides. And just, there we go. So now we've got a symmetrical object. And that is really messy. Let's figure out what's going on there. I think let's get rid of this edge. And that gives us a more symmetrical center. And let's get rid of this edge as well. There we go. What command did I use to just mirror? I used the symmetry command for SubD. And so if we do this up here, symmetry, and we're going to reflect it, and I'm going to pick this SubD and I'm going to snap it to here, and I want to keep that side, and it looks like that is really smashing that for some reason. All right, so that for some reason is failing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just shift drag select this entire side, and I'm just going to mirror it. And it looks like the reason that was failing is my center line isn't quite right. So I'm going to grab this entire center line, and then I'm going to set gumball to that point right there, and then scale to 0. And that's going to flatten everything. And then I can mirror, and then I can join. Symmetry is nice when it behaves itself. Symmetry is nice because it gives you the ability to be able to work on both sides of the part. in my case, it wasn't doing what I wanted it to do, so I got rid of it. And it looks like these are not joining. And it says they're not joined. Wow, this is really going to fight me. That's fine. So if it's fighting you, the nuclear option is just to stitch. And it looks like this is disliking something here. Let's figure out what it is. I don't think I'm going to take no for an answer. I think we're just going to stitch these. And something it doesn't like back here, but we'll just figure it out when we get there. And these. And we've still got a dark line down here, which means something is still not stitched. So there's two there. There we go. Two there. If you select it and it says two, they're not stitched. And it looks like that. See how that dark line's disappearing? That means that whatever the problem was, we're chasing it away. So that's one, that's two. And now that is what we were looking for. All right. So now we've just got a little bit of work to do to clean this up, and I want to get rid of some of these little dents and stuff in here. So maybe we get rid of this edge completely. That softens that out a little bit. And then these guys, I feel like they need to poke down a little bit. Like that. And maybe even this edge goes away. And maybe even these edges go away. There is a nice thing that happens in SubD where you can try stuff and see what happens and keep going until you get what you want. I think maybe some of those are worth keeping. Maybe get rid of these. And maybe what we want to do is instead of bringing those to that point, maybe we want to bring them together. So let's add a vertex from here to here. I like that better. And then let's get rid of maybe this edge. And then let's add a vertex from that point. It looks like I've got something overlapping here, which we need to fix. So let's fix that. So let's see what we can look at. And we can see that there's a little mess happening there that we need to deal with. So let's figure out what is happening there. Might even need to go into wireframe. This is the importance of box mode, is because when you're trying to diagnose like what's going on, like how do I figure out what's on top of what? See how that's crossed? So I'm going to pull this around like that. Now everything makes sense, and I can connect that one to that one. And when we go back, then that is a much nicer result. Maybe this guy goes away now. Nope. Maybe we add the center line back now. That's giving a nicer result. So let's take a look and see what it looks like in rendered mode. So that's starting to feel a little bit more cushiony. And even this one is chasing out quite a ways still. So maybe what I want to do is add another ring in here. So I'm going to select that, and I'm going to add one more ring in here. And then that allows me to be able to delete some of these edges out even farther and bring the tufting and the cushion and the wrinkles in farther. See this? See how that's starting to like fade out now? So we can kind of leave that like that. And that gives us kind of what we were looking for. So let's grab and do the same thing over here. I'm going to bring this edge out, and I'm going to get rid of one ring of these guys to bring that creasing in a little closer. I don't like how far it's chasing out. And it's still a little lumpy bumpy, so let's sort some of that out. That feels a little nicer. And let's throw our button in there. And I'm going to just make that large enough that it covers it. I can always scale that thing down if it's too big. And then we're going to mirror that to the other side. All right, let's see what it looks like. So we've got a little bit of work to do on the edges here still. So let's figure out what's going on with these guys. Maybe this whole ring needs to come down a little bit. Maybe that thing needs to scale a little bit, or even shrink a little bit. When you start to see like big, massive steps like this, that's where your flaws are, and that's why the box mode is really, really useful. And I'm starting to wonder if the way I built this is misbehaving enough that I may want to take a different approach. Let's see. We'll see how it feels as we get down the road a little bit. I don't love how lumpy bumpy that is. Let's try a different approach. Like I said, sometimes it goes into the fan and we need to redo it. So let's start with a cube centered at 0, and we're going to just pull this like that. same thing we did before. We're going to kind of just orient this with our edges of our shape, of our shell. And it doesn't need to, you know, for this kind of stuff, it doesn't need to be perfect because it's essentially going to overlap a little bit, you know. All right, let's see how that feels. And it looks like we don't have enough detail to get the shapes that we want, so I'm going to add an edge over here, and I'm going to add an edge over here. You can see that starts to sharpen up a little bit, and then that gives us the ability to be able to kind of pull these faces forward and make that a little softer. And this edge might need to go forward, get a little sharper, and come down. That feels a little better. Now let's tuck the back down. Pick both sides of a selection and then double click in between, and you'll get everything filled in between. And I'm going to scale it down in the back like that. Let's see how that feels. That feels a lot less hateful than the other one. Let's move that out like that. All right. Now, let's let's do the fun part again. Delete that. I'm going to scale this in, shift drag, shift command drag, and I'm going to go give myself 2. Come all the way in like that. And let's make sure that those are relatively in shape. That's so much nicer. That's so much less messy than the other one was. So I'm happier with that. Let's pull that in just a little bit, and this one in just a little bit. And I think I broke my own rule where I just added too much stuff. I think I just had too many edges in there. So let's get these, and let's add a bevel. Like that, and then we're going to pull these points down. That looks a lot nicer. And I might get rid of this edge to just, like we talked about earlier, just make those not quite go chase so far. I'm a lot happier with that. I think I wouldn't mind another edge or two in here, so let's just throw those in. Just could use a few more wrinkles. So let's stick one kind of right there to there. And then we can add a bevel to these. And we're going to just do tiny bevels. Then we'll grab the ends of these and pull those down. And it's all 1, 2, 3, right? You're seeing that in practice. It's just all little 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. That I feel a lot better about. That looks much more less bad. All right, so let's mirror that over. And I'm going to just assume that that center section is going to misbehave. And I think, interesting, see how that's chasing around in that direction? I don't necessarily want that to chase around in that direction, so I think what I'm going to do is get rid of that edge right there. And which way was it going? That edge right there. And then I'm going to connect that one, and I'm going to make a new center line that goes this way. And that should now give me that. Let's see if that messed anything up. A little weird right there, but we'll fix it after we get it mirrored over. So let's see if symmetry works on this. I'd love for that to work. Fabulous. So that worked now, and let's go into rendered mode. And that gives a much nicer look than we had before. And then, you know, if we needed this tufted area to be inner, you know, forward or back, we'd do the exact same thing. We'd just move it to a different spot. So if we needed to have two of these, we could just, you know, bring this forward, copy this whole forward. We could just take all of this stuff and copy it up to here and then get 4 of those. But in this case, we're just going to leave the 2 in the back. Okay, so that looks decent. I'm okay with that. So let's go and put the button. I'm going to scale this down, move it back and rotate. And I'm just going to tuck it there. All right, so there's that. And then we can steal this cushion for other, you know, for other purposes. And so if we grab this guy and we copy paste, and then we move this up and then rotate it, we can steal it for the back. And I'm going to isolate the back so that we can work on just that. And if I go to box mode, this becomes a much easier task because I can grab this guy and I can just poke it in there like that. And then I can just start moving edges to make this match more of this back. And it looks like this edge needs to get adjusted. Here's a cool trick in Rhino. Shift-Alt, right-click, and I can rotate the camera, which makes it easier for me to select an edge, and then I can move my gumball over here, and then align it with that, and then scale it. So Shift-Alt, right-click allows you to rotate the camera. And then if you just go to your perspective view or whatever, it resets it. That's one of those tricks that I use it so infrequently, but every time I bust it out, I'm like, oh, that's cool. So let's tuck that in there. And then let's grab all of this stuff up here. And maybe we'll get away with this, maybe we won't. Maybe we will have to actually redo this. But let's do that. And let's grab this. And that got really messy, so let's put that back. See if we can save this. All right, let's see what it looks like. That's not awful. We could produce some more refining on that probably and make it a little better. The other thing that I'm not liking is I don't like this. So let's get rid of that symmetry And let's get rid of those two edges. And let's get rid of these two edges. And then let's put them back, but let's connect this point and that point, and then that point and that point. And the topology on that will be a lot nicer. See that? And then this edge, we can decide whether that edge needs to be there or not. And let's bring the rest of it back. So that looks all right. Kind of smashed the back a little bit. So maybe we scale this guy in a little bit like that. And then we can decide, like, you know, do those bolsters make sense like that? Do they need to be back farther? You know, do we want them out that far? And if we don't, we can always come in here and do a cage edit, and we'll use a bounding box, and we'll use the world, and we can just grab these cage points and we can edit this thing a little bit. So that it feels a little more like our cushion. I kind of like that better. We added some complexity with that edit, but I'm not terribly concerned about that, especially for a demo. But let's bring this so that it's a little more protective of the sharp edges. And then we can decide, like, okay, now we edited that one. Now we need to change this one a little bit. I'm just going to scale that one. And then we can steal this cushion for up here. And, you know, we've got some editing to do, so let's do that. So the nice thing about SubD is it's really, you know, flexible. You can just kind of beat on it. And maybe this one is too far gone. So let's make a new one. It was easy enough to make. Let's make a new one. So let's do a 3-point, and we're going to just go this way, come up like that, and we will adjust this quickly. If the symmetry command worked, would you be able to just edit one side now and the other side would update dynamically? Yes, you could. And to be fair, symmetry does work. It's just the geometry has to be not messed up, and there was something messed up about our geometry, so we had to do a little chasing on that. All right, let's center this. Let's scale that out. And then we're going to add a few more edges. We don't have enough edges to get the sharpness that we're looking for at the top and the bottom, so let's add an edge. Like that, probably, and then probably like that, and then maybe like that, and maybe like that. And that gives us enough to be able to, you know, do what we need to do. Scale 1 is great because you can snap it in three-dimensional space. You can snap it to the edges of a line, and then just be able to edit it like that is super nice. All right, so let's pull these edges in. Just tuck them in there. And I might add one more edge in this direction. Let's see, where are we going to put our wrinkles? Let's put our wrinkles here. And let's move this edge just a bit. Let's do that. Don't like that. I like the sharpness that was there. All right, so let's put our wrinkles right in there. And if we needed to, we could add another edge. But let's just throw it in here and see what happens. I'm going to do this in box mode. Again, Shift Command drag, or Shift Control drag, sorry. Shift Control drag. And then let's get that. That's fairly positioned okay. And I'm going to just poke that in a little bit. And then let's add our bevels. And I think I'm only going to bevel this inner ring because we always beveled the outer ring anyways and then got rid of it later. So let's just bevel these. Like that. And then we'll grab the centers of these. And we'll pull these back. That one looks better than the others. Maybe get rid of one of these. And let's put our button in. And as far as, like, say for instance you wanted to, this was an industrial design study, and you wanted to do a print of this thing so that you could stick it on your desk and, you know, really see what was going on there. Let's see if symmetry will work. I think it might. Yeah, that worked. All right, let's bring everything back. And let's get all our buttons assigned. Let's hide our curves. I'm going to get rid of the symmetry just because I don't like the little symmetry line that's in there. Now, these, you know, those might feel better if they went forward. So we might redo that forward, or we might add another one. Maybe just add another one. Maybe that's the easy thing to fix there. Easy thing, and then goes down a rabbit hole for 2 hours. Let's get rid of this guy, and let's grab all of this and let's extract it. We're going to extract that surface, and then that is going to pull that out. I'm going to hide it. Actually, that made a copy. Didn't want to make a copy. I want to pull it out and break it off. Like that. And then that should break off that. I can join that back together. And then what I can do is copy that. And then I'm going to use the move command to move from here to there. And then I need to kind of spend a little time putting this back together. And this face, these and these. Let's work on these together. So let's take this and let's move that down to there. And then let's stitch these up. So I'm going to grab these two and stitch. And I'm going to grab these guys and stitch. And then I kind of want to bend this entire thing forward. Like that. And then let's see if there's any chance that this is going to join back up into our regular piece. And I think we might be able to get there. Maybe I get rid of this. Maybe I stitch these two together. Maybe I stitch that and that together. Maybe I bridge these two. And I'm going to just use one segment. Maybe I bridge these two. And I'm going to bridge that as well. And that gives us that. So let's copy this whole thing over. And see, it looks like there's a one big end gone in the back there, which is fine. We'll see. We'll see what a mess I'm making out of this. This may be a bridge too far, but let's see. If you never try anything, you never learn anything, right? All right, so what is unjoined still? Two there, so let's stitch those. Two there, so we'll stitch those. See how that dark line starts to disappear? That dark line is a good indication that there's something going on with your model that you need to deal with. And it's 99% of the time it's either a crease or something that needs to get stitched. And I've got a hotkey set up for stitch. I'm just running the stitch command over and over again. And then looks like these four edges, or those 4 points, I'm just going to pull those all together. All right, let's see what a mess we made. Yeah, that's not terrible. I'd almost buy that as a tufted cushion. There's a lot of adjusting that could be done for sure, but we're at an hour and a half now. And I think we are close to being able to call this done. I'm going to move this edge down and soften this whole thing just a hair. Hide the curves. Hide our image. It's funny, these two up at top, it makes it look like it's a little bit grumpy. It's a grumpy chair. Maybe those need to be moved down. Let's see. Can we do that easily? I'm one of those people that sees faces everywhere, so I'm like, why? Why is the chair mad at me? Let's see what we can do with that. If we were to grab this entire thing, and if we just did this, what happened if we do that? And maybe, this may be one of those things where I should have quit while I was ahead, but that is just not my style. Ah, that worked better. Now Now it looks less like it's mad at me. The chair was like mad at me for this demo. I'm like, what? Alrighty, so we're about there, and then the last, we would want to do some detailing back here to make sure that this is not poking through like that. So let's get all of this stuff and let's just move those in a little bit. And I know I grabbed that bottom edge. I'm going to just put that back where I found it. So that's not pushing through the back anymore. Hide our curves, go over here and hide our image. And then the last thing we would want to do is make some kind of connectors or something for this so that, there's some visual common sense that connects these things. There's got to be some indication of something that would be some kind of connector. Part of the, even if you're doing fakey stuff, it helps if the machinery makes sense. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, you can't just have something floating, but even though this is a fakey thing, I would believe that there's a piece of metal that, somehow holds this up, and that is more believable than having something that's just, floating in space. So let's follow that logic, and we'll add some kind of connector down here. Not that we're in much danger of anybody believing that this is a real chair, but the sentiment is at least there. All right, so maybe that's the right choice. Maybe it's not. We'll see. Looks a little bit like drag bars, and I think maybe the base, just from a balance point of view, needs to come back just a hair. So we'll just do something like that, and then that feels complete-ish. And then the last thing that we'll do is I'm just gonna change my lens length a little bit to give this a little bit more perspective and a little bit more drama. And then I am using, and it looks like I lost my buttons in here somewhere. There they are. That 35 millimeter lens gives you just a little bit more drama and a little bit more perspective. And then we'll just I'm using the Rhino 8 Automotive Studio, which if you don't use that one, the basic studio is fine, but I like the highlights that if I change to this studio up here, the highlights on this are a little more like harsh. The Automotive Studio tends to be really kind of has beautiful highlights, especially if there's any metal parts in it, and then it has a nice kind of warm to cool kind of thing going on in the background. And so I kind of like that from that point of view. And then if we just go up here and throw a quick ray trace on it, this machine's got a really fast video card in it, so we can just kind of bust out a rendering really quick and call this a day, hour and a half with some futzing and some head scratching. And we have something that we could, because this is all overlapping and watertight, we could, actually the cushions are not watertight because of the buttonholes, but we could bridge that over real quick, or we could just shrink wrap the entire thing and then throw it through a printer if you wanted to print one and stick it on your desk and hold it in your hand and try and figure out whether or not this is, what you wanted to do or not. We are in a position where we could certainly do that. So you just run a mesh or you run shrink wrap, get your parts, export as an STL, and then go from there. So any questions with any of that so far? Appreciate you sticking with me on the cushion odyssey. Sometimes this stuff goes off in the weeds and you got to figure out how to get yourself back home. But I think generally speaking, the second approach worked better than the first approach. I think this especially feels particularly cushiony and nice. The finessing of that, is it's important. There's some stuff going on down here that we might need to fuss that. Maybe we don't even like this cushion and we want to steal this cushion and replace it with that one. Certainly an option. But the general concept of having three edges in order to be able to pull something down and push something up is really crucial to try and make these forms work. And then it's all kind of finessing and, figuring out how to get the thing to flow and push around the way you want. I think this one is probably the most successful out of all of them. This one I love less. The base is kind of okay, but I think this top one actually ended up landing and looking the nicest. So we would probably, if I was going to stick with this for another, 45 minutes or something like that, I would probably steal this cushion, bring it down here, and then, evaluate how those looked compared to the other ones. And I may or may not, fuss with the bottom one or not, but we could just position it to be rendered in a way that none of them matter. No, that's cheating. If we stick it in a way where you can see them all, I think that, generally speaking, I think they're all okay. There's a little futz here I'd probably do. And this, I don't love that right there. I'd probably go in and futz that a little bit more, but I think you get the general idea. I think you get the concept on how to get there. And if we position it in a way where the light doesn't make that totally obvious, then we can get away with it. All right. Fabulous. I tell you what, if you don't have any questions, I'm going to let you go. My name's Kyle Houchins. This is Getting Started Rhino for Windows. Go make great stuff. Thanks. Bye. Hey everybody, I don't normally do this, but I wasn't super happy with the cushion result during the live session. And as I pondered this a little bit after I was finished and doing some editing and stuff like that, I decided that I wanted to try again and do this differently. And I have an idea that works much better than I had before. And what we're going to do is we are going to build this all flat and then project it onto a surface, which is going to maintain the shape of the cushion much better than it did in both of the attempts that I did in the live session. So let's isolate our base. We're going to draw a Nurbs curve, and we're going to make a surface that pretty closely matches our shape of our base here. And I'm going to just edit this. And, if I wanted to be fussy, I could probably just pull the curve from the base and call that a day. But I want to kind of have it not quite exactly perfect because it is going to be a soft thing and it does need to be soft and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to mess around with this a little bit and just get this curve to be a little nicer. And then I'm going to come here and I'm going to simply extrude this holding down Shift until it pushes through the edge of the base. And then I'm going to use this, I'm going to isolate that, and I'm going to use this as maybe what I'm going to do is maybe I will split this back just a little bit by iso curve so that it's a little closer, so I just have a decent reference as to where this kind of starts and ends. So I'm going to just do something like that. And I'm going to shrink this trim surface just so it's all contained like that. Now, what I can do is I can sculpt this Nurb surface a little bit. I'm going to change its degree to 3 and 3. And so what I'm going to do is sculpt this Nurb surface just a little bit. And I'm going to just pull this out a little bit like that. And I'm going to grab these guys and I'm going to pull this down a little bit. And I'm going to get the general shape kind of the cushion that I was looking for that I wasn't quite happy with the way that worked out in the live session. So I'm going to grab these and I'm going to pull those back a little bit and just get that kind of shape. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to isolate that. I'm going to go to the top view, and I'm going to draw my SubD the way that I want it to lay out. And I'm going to use just a 1x1, and I'm going to draw a surface that's kind of like this, and switch it to box mode. And I don't quite want it to be that far. I want to pick like exactly where I want the tufting to be, and I kind of want it to be right smack dab in the middle, about where the gumball center is. Now I'm going to take that. Notice this is dead flat. I'm going to take this, and I'm going to use the inset tool, which is this one up here. So I'm going to use the inset tool, and I'm going to just inset this a little bit so that I get my radial shape here. I'm going to take this center, and I'm going to scale it all the way down like that. Then I'm going to take this, and I'm going to subdivide it once. And that's going to give me a shape something like this. And if I go to the top view, and I'm going to just hide this for now, I'm going to straighten this out a little bit. So I'm going to grab this, scale to 0. I'm going to bring that to close to the center line. I'm going to do this, scale to 0. I'm going to bring that somewhere out there. And then I'm going to square these off as well. Same thing, scale to 0. And then I'm going to take this and scale to 0 as well. And then I'm going to take my center, and I'm going to bring this that way. And I'm going to take this and bring this way. And this gives me the right topology that I was looking for. And I'm going to scale that down very small like that. Now I can take these edges, which are already set up the way that I want them to be set up, and I'm going to add my bevel. So very similar process to what we did before, but this is just, it's a little cleaner and it works a little better. Now, what the bevel didn't give me is the last little connections in here. So I'm going to add those, and I'm just going to add that from here to here to here, from here to here to here. And I'm using that insert point tool, here to here to here, and then here, here, and there. Now I've got my edges, and if I grab all of these guys, right, this gives me the ability to be able to add my wrinkles that I was looking for, and they look pretty darn nice. If I go here to shaded mode, and then I switch to from box to smooth, you can see that that actually looks really nice. But I'm jumping the gun a little bit, so I'm going to leave those alone for now. And I'm going to bring back my original surface, and I'm going to take this and move it up here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually project this SubD onto the Nurbs surface. So I'm going to turn on the points for the SubD. I'm going to pick project. These are the curves and points I'm going to project. I'm going to go to the top view to do this. And then I'm going to project it down onto this surface. And you'll see what happens is it just takes that and smacks it right down on the surface there. And if I hide this now and I go to smooth mode, you can see that it conforms it a lot nicer than it was before. And now I'm in a position where I can actually take this, I'm going to hide it. I'm going to mirror this now. I'm going to join these. And then I'm going to do my wrinkles now that it's projected into space. So I'm going to pull these down a little bit like that. And I might even want to drop the entire center of this thing a little bit so that it's got that kind of sink in the center like that. And let's go to smooth mode and take a look. You can see that that is a much nicer version of what we had before. And again, we may want to mess around with getting rid of a few edges here and see what that does. We might want to change the topology on this. We may want to switch it from that to this. We want to go from here to here. And then we can look at this and say, like, is that doing what we want it to do? Do we need to get rid of a few edges? Or do we need to chase out a new edge? You know, do we need to get rid of this? So we can mess with the topology and get it to do what we want it to do. Now, to finish this out, let's do this one too. So let's do here. And let's drop that. You can see that we can just poke that down in there, and that's really nice and kind of cushiony, right? Get that in rendered view. And it looks a little nicer. We can decide which side we want and then, you know, pull it back over. We can copy from one side to the other. And if we grab this from the top view, we might want to poke this entire thing down a little bit to give it that sync. And we end up with kind of a much nicer shape than we had before. Maybe these guys need to come down a little bit more. Like that. And that's feeling a lot more cushiony, but it's also a lot smoother, right? So let's wrap that up. So let's finish that up. And if we bring back our seat base and we go to box mode, it's just a matter of fitting it now to the shell, which is pretty trivial. And then we just have to finish out the rest of the part here. So I'm going to grab this edge, I'm going to extrude, and then I'm going to extrude. And we might need to add an edge in there. Let's take a look. That actually is looking okay. Pull this edge a little farther. And you can see that this is a little bit smoother, a little bit nicer than the one I did live. So let's do the back. We're going to do this. Bring it in a little bit. And we'll go straight down. And we'll just scale that up. Now, all we need to do is finish off the edges of this. And so what we can do is grab this edge. There's only one face down, so I'm going to pull straight down. I'm going to put gumball here, scale to 0, rotate a little bit, and I just got to stitch these edges. Stitch these edges. Now, I might need to add an edge if I need some more sharpness in there, but we'll see in a second. So I'm going to come straight down, stitch those. Grab this edge. Gumball here, scale to 0. Give it a little rotate, put it back so it's close. Stitch these. And switch to box mode, or switch to smooth mode, and we have a nice, don't need that anymore, a nice cushion shape. Now, we may need an extra edge to sharpen this up, and so just a matter of coming up here and adding another edge. And as we bring this up, you can see that the edge of that cushion is going to sharpen a little bit. And then it's a matter of just deciding what we want to do as far as poking that out. But I think that this is a little better version of what we had in the live session. I'll let you be the judge. You can set me on fire in the comments. But anyway, I wanted to share that. I thought it was useful. That whole concept of being able to project the SubD is super, super powerful. And I definitely wanted to make sure that you were aware of that. And I'll let you decide whether this is a better version or not. We're going to throw material on there, and then we can compare the new version with the old version. And you can tell me which version you like better. I know which side I'm on, but I do these videos for you. You tell me what you like. Okay? That's it. Hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching. Thanks for sticking with me through the rest of this. Thanks. Bye.